A ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas has been tested as aid convoys enter the Gaza Strip. Israeli police fired tear gas and stun grenades at Palestinian protesters in occupied East Jerusalem's al-Aqsa Mosque compound around the time of Friday prayers. Some of the demonstrators threw rocks at police.
Similar events at the mosque a fortnight ago were one of the major trigger points for the 11-day conflict, which has killed at least 240 Palestinians, while 12 people in Israel have died. Correspondent Nick Dole has the details from Jerusalem.
It is holding for now, but it did get a major test today. We saw thousands of Palestinians come to the al-Aqsa Mosque compound in East Jerusalem around the time of Friday prayers, and there was also a very heavy presence from the Israeli police force. We saw scenes very quickly turn very heated. We saw the police using tear gas and stun grenades on some of the protesters. Some of those protesters were hurling rocks at the police as well. And what makes today's events potentially even more incendiary is that a very similar thing happened here about a fortnight ago. Police used things like tear gas on the crowds at al-Aqsa Mosque, and that caused great offence in the Palestinian community, and it was one of the major trigger points that really set off this 11 days of conflict, which has only just ended. And so things really were very tense for a while today. Fortunately, things kind of pulled back from the brink. The Israeli police did move back and tensions were calmed somewhat. But I think it shows just how fragile things are and how on edge these two communities remain.
Nick, we know how huge this humanitarian cost has been. 232 lives lost in Gaza, 12 in Israel, 70,000 people displaced. Have aid workers been able to move in? And if so, where are they concentrating their efforts?
The good news is that humanitarian aid convoys have been able to make their way into Gaza. Even during the time of quite intense fighting, some aid convoys were allowed through very small windows, but those windows were closed quite quickly by the Israelis because the IDF said that those crossings were coming under attack from Hamas. So yes, more of those aid convoys have been able to deliver things like food and medicines and fuel. Medical facilities in particular in Gaza have been hit quite hard. The World Health Organization says about 30 have been badly damaged. There are some shortages of medicine being reported. And then when you look at things like the lack of electricity, it's been quite sporadic. That causes even more issues for hospitals. And fuel supplies also feeds into that because hospitals need fuel to power their backup generators. So quite a lot of aid is being diverted towards those medical fields, but also just trying to get people into housing because the UN says that about 90,000 people in Gaza have been displaced by this latest conflict. And Gaza is an incredibly packed-in space already. So these people have been displaced from their homes and they have nowhere to go. They can't leave Gaza. So quite a lot of effort is being put into finding new homes for them as well.
And Nick, what about the pathway forward for relations between Israel and Palestine? We know that the US President Joe Biden said that there's a genuine opportunity for peace and progress here.
Yes, that's the hope, and it's not just the US. Egypt was one of the key brokers of this truce, and it has dispatched peace delegations, if you like, to both Israel and to Gaza. But the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken will be here in the Middle East in the coming days. Some of the details of his trip still haven't been announced, but he says he wants to personally meet with the leaders of Israel and the Palestinian Authority as well. The US has had a number of conversations with the Israeli government, making it very clear that it supports Israel's right to defend itself. And in fact, Joe Biden even said that moves would be underway to replenish the Iron Dome system. This is this system they have in Israel that shoots down about 9 out of 10 rockets that come over from Gaza before they can land. So he's certainly given very strong support to Israel in this, but he says that he's deeply committed to peace as well, and the US is hoping to demonstrate that by having one of its top diplomats arrive here in the coming days.
And just finally, Nick, when you look at history, these ceasefires are very fragile. Is it expected to last?
I don't think anyone is supremely confident, but I think there is at least a hope in the short term that we will have at least some peace. I mean, what we saw today did get a lot of people concerned, but the fact that things didn't escalate further, I think, will be some cause for comfort. But if you look at the words that people are using, it does suggest that things are still very tense. You know, today we had Benjamin Netanyahu saying that this was a victory for Israel, that despite calling a truce, there had been some unprecedented gains, that they'd been able to knock out a lot of Hamas's offensive positions and their tunnels and that kind of thing. And on the other side of things too, Hamas was saying that this was a huge win for them, that they had really kind of held their own in this, and they have said that their finger is on the trigger. So it does suggest that even a small flare-up could send things down the wrong path. But I think some people would have taken some confidence from the fact that after a pretty incendiary state of affairs up at al-Aqsa Mosque, things haven't got any worse today.